Hello. Hello, everyone. We are drawing tonight, hopefully. Hopefully. Let me adjust my mic real quick. There we go. What am I drawing? I don't fucking know. I decided this like 5 minutes ago. I probably, I don't know, maybe. We'll get there. That is the eraser tool. Oh, this is getting a little recovered from the 16 stream. Oh, never ever. Those wounds will stay with me for life. Where are we? Let's do it this way. I think I'll do a quick draft of this. Oh, I should double check if my audio is good, right? That looks alright. That's good enough. What do you think I am, a professional? I don't pay attention to shit. I don't do thing. Hope everyone's doing the okay in their respective time zone. I'm doing all right this night. Maybe I'll cook more food later for myself. I don't know. It kind of just is what it is. Oh, hello, Michael. Was it bad or painful? It was a 16 stream, you know? Nothing out of the ordinary for that game anymore. There was a really funny like dominant versus like there was a really big boss fight with a bunch of dominants, right? And Jill got to watch. She was there. She watched as other dominants, including Clive and his brother, like fight a boss fight together. Boy, did she watch. Good for her. You know, makes me wonder why she's in the game at this point. Not to be like exceedingly rude to her, but you know. Makes me wonder, what was the point? I'd understand if you dropped 16 at this point. I'm 30 hours in. Like, I'm gonna finish it. That would just look bad for the playlist if I didn't. But is it worth the suffering? Eh. It archives my moment-to-moment reaction for the game, right? Trying to figure out this man's model. This will take me probably a little bit. Hmm. Live reaction. Yeah, I don't actually, like, do those streams anymore, do I? I was doing that a bit for Vanguard, but... eh. Who am I drawing today? Oh, I'm just doing, a request drawing I got a little while back. And by little while, I mean, like, 2.5 weeks ago. It'll only be the draft, I think, for this. I'll probably try again at some point. Just kind of, like, figure things out. do have to make this man look older. More boomer, I would say. Not too much so, but I think this guy's actually younger than me, but hey. Something like that, Cirrus. What? Let's see here. Anyone keeping up with anything fun these days? I don't really watch too much anymore. I am like half keeping up with the current like DC event for DC Comics, which is Night Terrors, but spelled with a K, right? Because, you know, Batman has to be the lead for the story, right? Right. And that's been something. It's not terrible. It's not great either. I remember when it first got announced, I was like, because of course, like by the name, it's a nightmare themed and such. It's for some reason like a summer horror event, and I just kept thinking to myself the entire time reading like the first wave of issues, going, why wasn't this delayed by like 3 months? Because I feel like if this started in September, people would care more about this, right? Because it's horror themed. Why in summer? But because of that, I just kind of assumed, oh, are they gonna bring back Dr. Destiny? Right? He's a dream themed villain, and he's been dead for a while. Let's say a number of years, perhaps. And no. It opens on a reminder that he's dead, actually. He's lore relevant to the story, but oh well, that's fine. His dead body shows up, I guess, you know, that's fun. The new villain for the story, like, shows up, like, manhandling his body. So it's like, oh, okay, that's... new villain. I get it. New dream-themed villain. We're doing the thing. We only have like the prologue issue for the event, and then like a couple tie-ins currently. So we had like the prologue issue of Night Terror First Blood, I think is the name of the issue. Probably the strongest single issue of the bunch, other than like so this kind of pissed me off when I first saw like the cover for First Blood, and that was like, okay, right, new DC event. So front and center we have the DC Trinity, right? Your Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. That's fine, I get it. Off to the side you have characters like Sandman, Satana, Deadman, you know, characters that are magic or dream themed, you know, stuff like that. And then also Harley Quinn to the side, and I just kept like staring at that going, why is Harley on the cover of this? she just felt so off being on this cover. And it's like, sure, they managed to shoehorn her into the issue. That's fine. Like, I don't mind her like being a part of the event. That's whatever, right? But like, really, she's on the cover of the prologue issue for what purpose? For what are we doing here? What is? It is something. I do get that like DC has a, you know, they have a precedence to try to like get this character to sell better. Cause her comic sells like fine, you know, but it's not hitting, you know, it's not Batman numbers, right? It's more like, her comic sells fine. Especially for like modern DC, like it's fine. Granted, I don't know a soul that actively reads her comic, so I don't. Like, I know I talked to like a handful of people that still keep up with comics, and none of them read her shit, so. And I certainly don't. Like, fuck that noise. Though I'm pretty sure she is going to have a tie-in issue for this event, so I guess I'll have to. I don't have to read that. None of the tie-in issues really matter. It's fine. I did read a couple of the current tie-in issues that are out for Night Terrors, and they're like kind of bad. Like the the Poison Ivy one, I fell asleep trying to read that. The Black Adam one, I can't tell you a thing that happened in that issue. That was actually 20 pages of fucking nothing. That was neat. Well, oh god, what's her name? I read that comic. Is it Ravenger? Was that her name? Damn. Slade's son. Or not son, daughter. Sorry. Deathstroke's daughter. Was it Ravenger? Was that her name? Fuck. Whatever. I got bored. I didn't even finish that one. I got bored and didn't read it. Didn't finish reading it. You know what? The Joker one was really fun. Well, I'm actually like looking forward to issue 2 of the Joker one. Cause the premise of the, I guess I didn't mention this. Whoops. The premise for Night Terrors is that a new villain by the name of Insomnia has shown up, and he's looking for an object called the Nightmare Stone, which Dr. Destiny hid in the dreams of one of the members of the Justice League. So Insomnia has put the world to sleep so that he can sift through the dream worlds of every hero. And I guess every villain. because, you know, marketing. To try to look for this stone, right? So that's the reason for, like, the tie-in issues is like, ooh, what's this character's nightmare world like? And, like, part of the reason why I didn't like the Black Adam one is Black Adam was like, oh no, my kingdom is destroyed. Oh no, my powers aren't working. Oh, they're working again. And then, like, that's the end of the issue. It's just like he was wandering around for a bit, just going like, what's going on? And is this my country? Is it a dream world? Why aren't my powers working? And then just he gets them back for no apparent reason. Because, you know, he believes hard enough because it's a dream world. So but, like, the Joker tie-in issue is that he's fighting Batman on a rooftop, right? And it's raining. Batman slips, smashes his head so hard on the ground that he's left unconscious, slides off the roof of this building to his death. And Joker is just like, well, what now? The satisfaction of killing Batman has been taken from me. And so he just picks up a normal job. Like, he tries to do, like, villain stuff for a bit, and it just doesn't feel right, so now he's an office worker now. And it's, him slowly going more and more insane as he's, like, trying to do villainous things while working at this company, and just no one cares. I was like, you know what? It's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun single issue. It's alright. The first issue of the Batman Night Terrors comic also came out. That one feels more like an actual follow-up to the... That one's connected to the overarching story, so you do kind of have to read that one. Since, it's like the only tie-in issue so far in which, like, your hero or villain that you're in the perspective of is actively trying to fight Insomnia. Because Bruce, of course, knows it's a nightmare world, right? And so he's just kind of like, I know this is a dream reality. You can't pull the wool over my eyes, Insomnia. I am the night. You know how it is. You know, Bruce being like that is. The issue's kind of neat. Though Bruce is, like, a child for the majority of it. Because in the dream world, he's, like, his child. Like, he's, constantly reliving the night that his parents died. Hello, Wind. And that's kind of, like, the premise of his dream world. He gets over it real fast. One scene that is neat, it's, like, one of the only kind of cool nightmare moments in the comic, because, like, the tie-ins don't really feel like they're too horror-based, which is a little disappointing. But there's this, like, kind of neat moment where, like, Bruce vomits up this horrifying bat creature with a gun for a head. And you just see this, like, malformed gun bat, like, having to, like, stand up after just being vomited out of Bruce's mouth, and then just start shooting at Bruce. You know, because his head works, the gun head works. It's kind of neat. The design's real cool, I will admit. It's edgy as fuck, but you know what? We do it. Like... Like, is it a little on the nose? Sure. But I'll take this, like, over-the-top nonsense. Like, if I wasn't okay with, like, in-your-face, over-the-top symbolism, I wouldn't be reading comics, obviously. Like, it just kind of comes with the territory, right? What? The downside is that, like, this event is really poorly timed, I guess. Because if you don't know, just back in March, DC relaunched their whole lineup of comics again. It wasn't a reboot or anything. It was just they're relaunching under a like event banner kind of thing. Like all the comics were like restarting from #1 with like new creative teams to kind of like, you know, vary up comics a little bit. You know, they do that every now and again. And they were calling it like Dawn of DC, right? Because it's like post Dark Crisis on Infinite Earth / Lazarus Pit, because event comics they sell. And they were just rolling out the Dawn of DC books very slowly. They're still launching Dawn of DC books like 3 months later. And then they're pausing Dawn of DC for Night Terrors. And I'm just like, you could have just waited till, like, I don't know, fall for Night Terrors, and then the Dawn of DC books would have all rolled out by now. You know? I don't know. I'm not an editor. Maybe there's a plan. I think they just won an event during the summer. Like, I think that that's it. They wanted a summer event for... Because I don't think Marvel has events going on during the summer. Then again, I'm not really reading too many Marvel books currently. I'm kind of just reading Fantastic Four and Red Goblin. I guess I'm reading Venom. I'm reading Venom. Just, you know, it's, that one is more of a, I can't wait to see how much this writer keeps one-upping how absolutely insane this run is. It's kind of exciting to read the current Venom run, just because it's like, what are you gonna introduce next? What's happening? I'm so excited to be confused this week again. Because it is... That book is something. Like, it's fun. It's real fun. Like, I don't know, I had put a tweet earlier about what was, oh god, what was my tweet? I remember really liking it. Because it's just like, wow, if you're not reading the comic, this tweet makes 0 sense, which was the point. How did I word it? Oh, right. Eddie defeating Eddie by using Eddie as a symbiote to go and fight Eddie to stop Eddie from becoming Eddie so that Eddie can become the Eddie that he wants to be. Like, and that's the current story of, that's what's been happening recently in, in Venom, like... Shit's so funny. Like, I know that people are, like, really mixed on the current run because it's... it's an Ewing story. Like, it's... The current writer of Venom is Al Ewing, and it's like, you either love or hate it, right? At this point, Eddie will pull a fly off pull a Fry and become his own grandpa? No. I mean, that could happen. But currently Eddie is an immortal time-traveling space god. So, like, it can happen. But also, like, I don't think that's going to happen. Ah, David, hello. And hello, Lag. It is, you know, it's comic books, right? They're allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. Which, you know, is why I love them. It's definitely why I love reading, like, my superhero comics. It's never a dull moment. Do it like that. I think. Yeah. Currently reading Power Rangers and TMNT. Man, I'm like a decade behind on TMNT. Like, I started reading the IDW run of TMNT back in like 2012. And then kind of fell off the book and never got back on that train. I mean, you know, it's a little unfortunate, but like, I know that it's still good. Like, I didn't fall off of reading it because like I thought it was bad. I enjoyed what I read of it. Just kind of like stuff at the time. Stopped keeping up with it. Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll get back to it. I know that, like, being me, I did. This was now years ago as well. Very, you know, very much so. But I remember when they released the one-shot like origin issue for like Bebop and Rocksteady, and I remember reading that. Like, you know, because Bebop and Rocksteady, you know, gotta support the boys, right? Because that they're. Is it embarrassing to say that they're the only reason why I ever interact with TMNT? A little bit. But yeah, it's a little embarrassing. But also, it's true, so. It's like if those two aren't there, my interest is, like, pretty low. Which I do think is an issue with me, not the book. Or, I guess, the brand? I think the app brand is the better word. Yeah. Because I always, like, anytime, like, a new TV series for TMNT starts, I always, like, watch a little bit of it and then fall off. Like, I remember that happened with, what was it? Rise of TMNT? Was that what they named the, like, 19 series? Or however long ago that was now. I don't know. It's you know, it's time is blurring together, you know. Truly an illusion. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. This is why I don't do posing with hands normally. I just don't know what to, like, do with them. That's okay. Yeah, because I haven't really been keeping up with too many, like, DC books. Just because they've... I don't know, they don't really publish shit that I really like anymore. Or, well, I'm keeping up with the current Captain Marvel book. Just because it's like... I always try when they release new Captain Marvel books. I'm sorry, Shazam books. Can never get used to that. And I don't know, for like the past decade, they've just felt off to me. Especially since the New 52. But the current run, you know, it feels like Billy again. I was actually very surprised, like, and they're kind of like, who is the current writer? Give me a minute, that's gonna bother me. Where is it? Oh, it is Mark Waid. Okay. Yeah, no wonder I like it. It's Waid. He's like, he always does a great job of doing that shit. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, it almost feels like I'm picking back up where, like, Billy left off pre-New 52. And that's been exciting. It's only like 2 issues in currently. And of course stopping because of Night Terrors, but you know. That's fine. How does this work? We'll do it like this. Let's see here. How does shoulder to... We'll do it like this. And then we'll go back up and enlarge the hand. Yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah. Because I think it's kind of nice that they're bringing back the plot point of, like, Billy not seeing himself as captain as himself anymore. Like, he's putting, like, more of a, like, psychological divide between the two of them. Because that was a thing back in, like, the Justice Society book. I always kind of liked that plot point. Making him feel, like, off. That and Waid is really trying to, like, he no longer calls himself Shazam. They now call him Captain. And it's like, oh, that's... I see what you're trying to do, and it's appreciated, but it is awkward. Like, it is awkward, Waid. It is appreciated, though. Because I'm definitely one of those people that's like... I want him to be called Captain Marvel again. That was a sticking point during the New 52 for me, where they changed his name from Captain Marvel to Shazam. You know, there's a bit of that like historic pride in that, where he was the first Captain Marvel in superhero comics, so it's like we should, I don't know, it feels weird that that name was kind of taken from him. At least to me it is. It's like, come on, that's like Billy's thing. He's Captain Marvel. Because technically DC still owns the copyright to Captain Marvel. So there's no reason why they can't use that name for him. How diet chunk is this lad? He gave me his like VR chat model. But it has a pretty normal proportions. Oh no, this they stopped using the name Captain Marvel back in like 2011, I think was the year that they stopped using the name Captain Marvel for Billy. It was during New 52 where that change was made. So this was not a movie, like, fueled decision. Like, we do know the reason why they changed the name, and that's for... They had said it was due to help marketing of the character, because if you don't know... Legally, Billy's / Captain Marvel's comic cannot be called Captain Marvel due to trademark. Because Marvel owns the trademark to the title Captain Marvel. So that's why Captain Marvel at DC, his book was always titled, or at least not always, but post, I think, 70s, his book has been titled Shazam. And I remember there is an interview at Jeff Johns about this back in like 2011, in which like the thing he had to say on that matter was like, everyone thinks his name is Shazam anyway. And that was his comment on why they changed the book title. Or I guess changed the character's name, not the book title. Which is weird, because like all the cartoons at that time period still called him Captain Marvel. So you had people confused more than anything else of, wait, but I thought his name was Captain Marvel. Like, why are they suddenly just calling him Shazam now? Like, it was real odd. The name was rolled out very poorly, let's say. Uh, Also, if you, this is also the reason why Marvel will never stop using the name Captain Marvel, because if they don't produce a book with the name Captain Marvel on it every so often, they will lose the trademark for it. And they don't want that to lapse, because then DC could start using it again. This is the only reason why, you know, that title sticks around at Marvel Comics, despite the fact that no one likes it. I feel like that was like the worst decision they ever made, was like making Carol Captain Marvel. Because I have not heard of anyone like being Carol stans since that creative decision happened. Because back when she was Miss Marvel, she was actually a pretty popular character. And then she became Captain Marvel, and suddenly everyone hated her. I guess killing Tony Stark might do that. Uh, it is what it is. What changed? Her personality. Because, like, Carol before used to be, like, a fun, comedic go-getter type girl. And when they turned her into Captain Marvel, they, for some reason... This is gonna sound bad, okay? Okay, let's just... The wording is not going to be the most favorable. They wanted her to be their, like, hard-ass, feminist girl power icon. You know, don't need no man kind of thing. Like, so when they changed Carol like that, so went all of the comedic elements that people liked the character for. Like, kind of is what it is. And you know, it's weird because in retrospect, people are fine with that decision. Because we had gotten, that was how we got Kamala. Is because that freed up the Miss Marvel space, and so they had to make a new Miss Marvel. And that's how we got Kamala. And that was a very well-received book. Back in, like, 2014, 2013, whenever that came out. And, you know, they did try to, like, bridge her into the mainstream. It never worked. Because she cameoed on, like, every cartoon airing at the time. She was in some of the video games. Like, there definitely wasn't, like, a lack of effort to make Kamala work in the mainstream. And it just never happened. Which is a little sad. I know that I was always, like, rooting for her back in the day. Like, oh, this time people will like her. Like, hmm. I hope Vanello's okay with him being a little chunky. Because he is going to be a little chunky. Because I say so. Who doesn't love like a little, just a little bit of chunk? You know, that's what makes Dave cute, right? From Password. The color wheel challenge took you more or less. It was like, what was it? 3 streams? It was like 3 streams. That's about it. Like all the work I did on it, I did like on stream. So it's not like wasn't like too bad for how many characters I drew. That's about how long it takes me to draw that many characters. I'm gonna slim this down without losing the perspective or making it too bad. I don't know. Maybe we'll just leave it at that. Maybe we'll thicken this finger a bit. There we go. I'm too, in hours? Ugh, I don't know. I try not to think about how long it takes me to do artwork, because it's, I'm pretty bad, so... Like, I'm pretty slow for what I produce. At least for, like, industry standard kind of stuff. Oh, Mega Puppy, Maestro, hello. We all work at our own speed. Well, that's a nice sentiment, but that actually matters in this industry. Which is part of the reason why I didn't make it, so... Huh. Alright, no worries, Maestro. Well, again, nice sentiment, Michael. Like, I do appreciate it, but it is like, like, it was just something I couldn't do to, like, actually, like, be in that field. Just kind of one of those truths that, like, one has to accept. Like, oh, just not, you know, just not good enough for that. You know, it's a tough, it was, like, a tough career, so, like, yeah, like, I get it. You want people that, like, can do better work faster, and I just could not do that. Let's see. Because I remember I had to, like, give up on working in animation very fast. That uh that was like in school. I realized like I could not do that. I was not fast enough nor consistent enough to be able to do that. Because that was, you know, that was the original dream, right? Like little Babby Josh was like, I want to make cartoons, and it's like, yeah, that's not happening, kid. Like, like you're never getting there. Oh, that's okay though. Hmm. I don't envy animators, rather stick with comics. Yeah, that's true. That was like a follow-up thing I wanted to try doing, and then like there was just no job for that where I live. So I tried to do like I applied for a bunch of like more graphic design studio work and could not get into those positions either. Kind of one of those like after college couldn't actually get a could not actually get a job in like the thing I studied for. Is what it is. Hmm. It. Hmm. But hey, now I have a bunch of mediocre skill sets that I can't really do much with. At least by, like, world standards. Yeah. Because I'm also, like, too much of a cartoonist to actually get other types of, like, art jobs. So it's like I couldn't do those either. Like, oh well. But, let's see. How do I want to work in the tail? It's not bad to specialize in something. It's bad in the area I live. And I say that because the only studio workers that do well in, like, all of the areas around where I live, like all of the cities and stuff, is fine arts. And, you know, the stuff that I do, that shit ain't fine art. So... Oh yeah, the little doodle things. They're fine. But yeah, also not really like a career. What an odd tale. So definitely also one of those things that I couldn't, like... I couldn't convince family members. You know, like, there's kind of one of those things of, like, when I went into the schooling for that, you know, you hear the age-old thing of, like, oh, but you can't make a career out of that. And it's like, well... guess I couldn't prove them wrong. Oh, well. Still like doodling, though. Like, it's probably just, like, the area I, like, went to school in, but it's like, man... Yeah, everyone else did, like, fine arts stuff. So, like, even when, my assignments and stuff got put into, like, the student, like, events, like, they were pretty immediately looked past, even by other students. Just because it's like, oh, you're looking at all these, like, fine arts paintings and ink pieces, and then, like, little cartoon strip, like, off to the side. Was not the best look. Was not the best look. Was, definitely did not make my work stand out in a good way. Well, you know, lessons learned. Yeah, because I had to take fine arts classes, of course. So like I do have like, oh no, I don't anymore. I think all of that work is gone. I never archived any of it. But I did like have to do like a realistic like figure like drawings and like realistic like like landscape painting and stuff like that. They never looked great. That was something my painting teacher never liked about my work, is he would always complain that's like, he would either complain that my realistic pieces didn't look great, or that like my paintings that did look fine, I was I basically was just doing like inking but with a paintbrush, and so it had a really illustrative like look to it, and he didn't really like that either. So, which like I get, I like it that we were supposed to be learning like a more fine art style painting, but eh. Just couldn't really do it. It's like, no, I'll just stick with my funny round cartoon characters. Let's see here. Yeah, this tail looks more like I know that he said that his character was like a specific type of rat, but like it was a specific type of rat that had more of like a squirrel or raccoon tail, and I'm like, excuse me, like, and I'm looking at it like, okay. Cause it has like a rounded tail. Let me just... Oh god, where's my stream preview? Let's go. No, where did things go? Sorry, it does that when I take a screenshot. Oh. Oh, wait, I should probably also turn you off for a second. Because I need to type something. Let me... There we go. There we go. Okay. Well, I'll probably put that down for a moment. That sounds like a good idea. And I don't know. What are we gonna do? I have plenty of time to do, like, anything else. I can do anything. The world is my oyster. I don't know where that saying comes from, but, like, hey, I don't fucking know. Probably, like, heard that once in my childhood and was like, okay. Let's see here. Draw Mike. Not today. I'll do something like that after I actually, like, get back to playing the game. There we go. I don't know exactly what expression I want to give him. Well, you know, better just place the eyes for now, I guess. Gotta do that, you know? Get those eye holes in there. Actually, is there a better picture of this lad? There is not. That's fine. What? Eye holes are important. They do be a little bit important, Mega Puppy. Just a little bit. You don't do eyebrows? I don't. Not really. Scandalous, I know. But that was always, like, I don't know. I would always get comments about that in school as well. The things that, like, would always come up in, like, peer-reviewed work is, like, like, the lack of eyebrows most of the time, and B, the amount of fingers I had on characters. That was, like, always a contentious thing within peer review for me, is, like, most people, including my teachers, did not like that I didn't have, like, a full set of fingers on characters, on my, like, my people drawings. At least most of the time. Like, if I had to, I had to. Like, it is what it is. But if it was, like, a design assignment, I, like, never put, like, the full set of fingers. I would always do, like, the set of, like, the thumb and 3 fingers rather than thumb and 4. And I would always get a variety of comments, let's say, about that. I don't think it looks weird when you have 5 fingers in a cartoon thing. It's more that I think it's just more that we're used to seeing like the 3 fingers versus 4. Especially like nowadays post like Disney. Genuine question, is that an approach to standardization to a certain style or area? What do you mean, like the decision to have like 3 versus 4 like fingers? So it was a cost-saving measure, actually. Like the reason why that was implemented originally. Which if I have my history correct, I think it was within the Disney company, or at least like associated with Disney when that happened. It's been a while since I've done that research, but if I remember right, they just it like would save them thousands in production. Because you're now drawing 1 less finger. So that's like one thing that every single animator for every single frame does not have to draw. And you know, that adds up very fast. It's the reason why, like, in those older Disney cartoons, you didn't usually see pupil. I mean, yeah, you would see, they wouldn't draw, like, the whites and eyes. You would just get, like, the animated pupil, like, on a blank face. And it's just because those are just lines that you no longer have to draw. And that's important to, like, in design and animation, like, those kind of decisions are very important and are very lacking nowadays. Like, those key decisions to help a production just aren't there as much anymore. And I'm like, oh, this just makes the show look bad. Like, not to bully a show. Oh, wait, here, I'll answer this first. Isn't that part of the reason why they had everyone wear gloves? Yes, because it meant that animators only had to learn 1 set of hands, right? So that just makes it easier. But, like, earlier this week, I had watched the show... What the fuck was the title? My Adventures with Superman. Is that what it was? And those character designs are just... They're, like, just over-design to the point where the show looks like garbage. Like, there is, like, so little consideration in helping out, like, how the show will look animated with those character designs. And you can see that during the only 2 episodes that have aired. Is, like, characters just stand around and barely move. Because the designs are just too complicated enough to where it looks too awkward with them moving. It's too hard to animate them. So you just have these really awkward scenes where, like, you would think a character would move more. And in fact, some scenes have a sound effect to make you think they're moving. Nice try. That did not get past me. And there are so many, like, I feel like the storyboarding is pretty bad in that show as well. Not because, like, you can't tell what's happening, but that, like, you can tell the production itself can't keep up with the storyboards that were drawn. Like, it's pretty quick, so I can understand if, like, this didn't bother anyone, but it really bothered me. And that's the character, like, Lois and Jimmy go to the, like, beach line, I guess. Is that the word? Dock? They were at the shore. That's the word. Yeah, the shore. And because they were looking for a specific boat, right? So they pan out to show the boat, like, on the beach, like half in the beach, half in the water. Did I cut out for a second? No, at all. I'll wait a second. Yes? Yes. Okay. And so it creates this really awkward moment where, like, they go, the boat, and they point, and then it cuts to a wide shot, and you just see this boat marooned on the shoreline. You hear the waves of, like, the water going up onto the shore, and the water's just not animated. And, like, when that scene happened, my only thought was, like, you can storyboard around that, though. Like, you can just, like, legitimately, you can just cut the shot in a way to where it doesn't show the shoreline. And you can just have... Heck, you don't even have to, like, do the wide shot to show, like, well, the establishing shot, right? Of the characters walking on the shoreline with the boat. You don't need to do that. You can just have the characters go, the boat! Like a close-up shot of Jimmy and Lois doing that. And then cut to them, like, getting up on the boat. Or right next to the boat. So you don't have to show the water. Like... those are decisions you have to make in production. Like, and there was just, like, a lot of that in that show where I'm like, you could have cut this better. No, you should have, like, you can do this in a way to where you don't have to, like, show that, because you clearly can't handle that as part of production. And, like, I don't want it to, like, come off as, like, bullying. Like, the show, because it's like clearly that show has, like, a lot of effort put into it, but, like, they should have designed things a little better and made a couple smarter decisions production wise. At least that's how I feel about it. That's me not getting into the fact that I hated how the show was written, which is a whole different argument. It's not that the writing is bad. I just found it very annoying. I don't even think the show is bad. I just don't like it. It's one of those, okay? But Michael, people are enjoying the show. Like, it's getting, like, positive reviews and shit, and people are like, oh my god, Clark is so cute in this show, himbo. And, like, sure, I think that's annoying. Like, sure, I have a lot of, like, dynamic nitpicks, because, like... I don't like the emphasis on Clark, I guess. I know that might be a weird criticism, but I'm like, no, like, Lois is supposed to be in love with Superman, not Clark, and Jimmy is supposed to be best friends with Superman, not Clark. Like, they put in all these concessions to try to make, like, Clark feel more involved. And I'm like, but why? Like, this doesn't help the show, or this doesn't help the dynamics. It now makes Superman feel like he shouldn't be in the show. If that makes sense. Clark is cheaper to animate? I don't think he is. Would you have liked it more if the show was called Adventures with... I mean, I think you could almost get away with, like, what is it, the 80s or 90s, like, sitcom title that just called Lois and Clark. Probably would prefer something like that. Like, I get it, they're trying to reverse the dynamic where it's Superman is an act and Clark is the real person. Like, that's what they're trying to, like, go for in this, like, installment, and I'm just kind of like, I'm not here for that. Like, it's kind of like, what's the point? I also kind of find this version of Lois irritating. She's a little too modern in a way that I find more annoying than endearing. Yeah. And like I do think Lois should feel, isn't Superman always the act? Oh, Sirius, I'm so sorry. If you're unaware of how this works in comics. No, Clark is the act. That is, like, in Metropolis, Clark is an act. That is the way this has always been done. It is what it is. So Bruce Wayne isn't an act. The Playboy billionaire is the act. Kind of like how, bumbling, journalist is an act. And it's, I realize this is also weird criticism. They made Lois way too nice in like this show. Like, she's almost not enough of a cutthroat go-getter. And I'm like, no. I want my Lois to the point where, like, she's willing to risk legitimately other people's lives and careers to get what she wants. I realize that's my Lois. that's the Lois Lane I've grown up with. So that's like what I want to see when it comes to a Lois Lane. And this girl just feels like, what if Luce from the Owl House was now a reporter? So she doesn't feel like Lois to me. And, you know, it's modern Jimmy Olsen, so I don't like modern Jimmy Olsen. Stop being scared of, like, pre-crisis Jimmy. That's all I'm saying. Like, it is what it is. Alright, see you, Leg. And, you know, it's not like the show isn't, like, trying. Like, there's a bunch of, like, really cute references here and there. Like, when when Jimmy mentions that his username was like Firebrand, I think that's what the name was. I was like, oh, like, you know, I clapped when I saw that reference, right? Like, it's like, oh, okay, like they're digging up some parts of the lore, as it were. Because that was one of like Jimmy's superhero identities in comics. One of them, you know, Jimmy's been a superhero multiple times, actually. Though I wish they fully committed to that joke. There's a really easy way to have made that joke a little better, and that's like you have Clark say that his username is Nightwing. But I also understand that like for people who don't read comics, that wouldn't make sense. Like because if you're unaware, Superman was Nightwing at one point, and that's where Dick Grayson got the name. It is what it is. Oh, hello, Messer. Are you drawing Discord icon? I am no. I am just drawing a disgruntled boomer. No, this is not a self-portrait. Actually probably need to cut it there. Do it like that is what it is. Probably should make the hat tighter. We will... We will make the hat very tight on his head. Gotta be lore accurate, as it were. I'm always bad at like figuring out that like the lore, right? I guess I have to... Oh, well, you know, the perspective is like whack as shit here, so... Yeah. But I definitely, like, I don't know, I don't think I'll continue watching that show. I just did not... I did not enjoy either, like, episode that came out. Just like, no, not for me. It's a little too... For lack of a better term, it's a little too Tumblr for me. If you know what I'm, like, trying to say with that... Oh yeah, that's a Selkie show. That's this is definitely a it is better to not know who these characters are kind of thing. I do think it's weird that they went with like this style of modernization for Lois, because I always champion that like Lois should feel like a modern go-getter. Like Lois is the one that should feel like she gets revamped era to era to match like what is the go-getting woman of that time period. But I think that like Superman needs to stay the same. Like I think he needs to be like not touched by time, essentially. Because that's part of like why that character is so beloved. Is he kind of like stands for a very specific period in time. Universal main characters? No, it's just that like Superman is meant to like embody a very specific era of Americana, if you will. And like once you omit that, you now have a different character. Like there's a reason why like all of the most beloved stories for Superman, he has like the same personality in all of them. This is Superman needs to like represent a fixed period in time, because it gives him that. It gives him a very specific level of sincerity to his actions. That like if you mess with his personality too much, you lose that entirely, and he no longer feels like Superman. And you know, I guess if that's what you're going for, fair. I'm not gonna like that. Because at that point, why is it Superman? This could be any other character. Because you also have a lot of the really famous stories for Superman are stories about why Superman is important for not changing. Like, it's so weird that like in adaptation people just omit that entirely. Granted, I don't expect All-Star Superman every time. You know, I get it. But also, like, your Superman should probably act a little more similarly to All-Star if we're using, like, a templated thing. You know, the greatest Superman story ever made. I don't actually believe that, but, like, it is a very good outline. It is a very good, like, basis. Man, I reread that, like, last year. Like, just All-Star Superman. Damn. That comic's still good. You can take so many just pages from that and just, like, it works standalone. It's kind of beautiful. I think it's my favorite work from Grant, but since it's short enough to where Grant's like unfortunate isms don't get in the way. Though I can't really recommend the All-Star Superman adaptation because there is an animated film. I just don't. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not even bad. It actually is a very, very faithful adaptation. It's a worse movie than the comic is a comic. If that makes sense. Like, the comic book is an amazing comic book. The movie is just an okay movie. Like, disregarding it as an adaptation, like, due to its production quality, due to its, like, pacing, it's kind of like, oh, it's just an okay movie. So I'd rather, like, read, like, a great comic versus an okay movie. Though, like, it is the same story, though, so you're only missing, like, the quality of the comic versus, like, if you choose to watch the movie. We want this. We want this big ol' otter. We need him to come across a little more stern. Yeah. So this also definitely comes from a place of, like I've been reading those characters for so long that most adaptations feel kind of like out of whack to me. Though we did have a semi-recent, like, a Superman that I really liked. Like, I really liked the Superman in Justice League Action. You know, that TV show that literally nobody watched, right? Yeah. Boy, did that show come and go like the wind. Kind of too, like, I don't think it went on, I don't think it was too short of a series. I guess my complaint about that is, like, it feels weird that no one cares about it. Because that show is weirdly good. It's... like, they even got back a bunch of the old voice actors for that, which, like, matters to some people. It really doesn't matter to me. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they got back Kevin Conroy for Batman. And my first thought was like, okay, but did they get back the writer or sound director that made his performance so good to begin with? Like... I'm kind of more of an all or nothing kind of guy, like, ooh, they got the voice correct, but is he gonna feel like the version that I remember? If so, like, if not, then why get this actor back? But I know that that excites a lot of people, so that's fine. Like... And in that case, like, Kevin did a great job in Justice League Action for, like, that version for Batman. Granted, I don't think, like, getting Kevin was necessary for that version. That definitely seemed like more of a marketing gimmick to get older fans back. Also feels kind of bad that Sam Daly, was that his name? Who played Superman in what movie was that? Flashpoint Paradox. Like didn't get like too much of a time to shine in that role. I kind of thought that he would have been like the actor for that era of films, but oh well. Seems like a missed opportunity to me. But I also think it kind of sucks that like do we have a name for that continuity? The like 2013 to 2019 for films for the DC universe, like I thought it kind of sucked. Just kind of I only watched the first half of that universe. I know that people say that they got better after a certain point, but I did not like those first like 5 years, so stopped watching them. I felt like I was just watching like mediocre adaptations of like New 52 storylines, which is what it was. And it's like, man, I didn't like these stories the first time around. You expect me to care about them? Like... like here in a movie, like I mean, personally I always thought Court of Owls was overrated schlock, but hey, that's just me. Please don't crucify me for that opinion. I know people really like that storyline. The 15th time will be the one. Oh, God. You know, or you can just be decent out the gate. I don't know. Oh, so the new movie continuity for the DC animated universe is called The Tomorrowverse, which also has a much better Lois Lane than that TV show. Just saying. Like, if you wanted to, like, modernize Lois in a really fun way while giving her that edge that Lois is known for, oh, the Lois in Superman Man of Tomorrow, real good. Love that Lois. That's probably the reason why the new TV show like a little bit rubs me the wrong way of just like, really, you decided to modernize her in this way? We already had a good modernized Lois. And she's still in media. Like, is what it is, I guess. Actually, that was a pretty good Superman film. So like Superman Man of Tomorrow, which was the first movie set in the Tomorrowverse. Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty soon they're gonna make Lois into a TikTok reporter. She's like halfway there in the current TV show. Like, all she needs to start doing is flossing, and we've gotten there, guys. Like, I think the moment that kind of like that kind of broke me a bit with Lois's characterization in the new show was like, there's a scene where she's like, oh, well, like, I can't text Clark, uwu. That's wrong. Like, I don't like him, you know. I can't text him, no. I'm not blushy around him, and I'm like, who is this woman? Who is this? Any other Lois would just be like, I'm gonna ask Clark on a date, and he's going to say yes. Like, like I don't know who this like non-go-getter woman is. This is not my Lois. Because they don't even hard commit to her being like more of a go-getter. They kind of like give up halfway into an episode. It's like, oh no, she's totally like okay with getting Clark and Jimmy fired. You know, if it means that like she gets her thingy thing. Also, she's not even a reporter. I don't know if you all have watched the episode. They don't like Jimmy's not actually a photographer, and Clark and Lois are not actually journalists. I don't know why that decision was made. They're instead interns at the Daily Planet. Why was this decision made? I don't know. I find it more distracting than anything else. It's bad. It's a bad creative decision. Oh, hi, Selkie. Sorry, nothing good is being said about this show. I watched it when it premiered and was just kind of like, I kind of hate all of that. Right there. Just all of that. No. We're not doing that. One issue is that you could literally change everyone's names and suddenly the show isn't a Superman series. I think that's an issue as well. Like, what is the point of this being a Superman show? You could just title this, like, TikTok/Fortnite interns trying to be journalists, and the show doesn't change. Okay, but I can't wait for Clark to start Fortnite dancing. It's gonna happen. At this rate. Was to show her work her way up the ladder? Sure. But what does that get you? Right? Like, when you make a creative decision like that, it's okay, but what does that get you in the show, though? Because, like, if you took away the fact that they're interns and just said that they were reporters and that Jimmy Olsen was Lois's photographer, does the episodes change? And the answer is no. Because for all intensive purposes, they are written like they are reporters at the Daily Planet. Like, them being interns only comes up passingly. To the point where I'm like, this feels like a non-decision? Like, and you can't run that back. You now have to say that they're interns going forward. So I don't know why they didn't make them more into interns. Like, you could have, if you wanted to run back and show Lois going up the ladder, why not have had her be an intern and then in these first 2 episodes show her gain an interest and snooping around and being a reporter? Huh? Like, wouldn't that have been, like... Now you have a reason to start her out as an intern and then pursue something more. But now she's just an intern acting like a reporter. And that's just, like, I found that distracting when watching the episodes. Because there's, like, no point anymore. It's odd. To sacrifice your career for something? Oh no, they're not doing that. They were already recycling backgrounds. They're gonna be using the Daily Planet. Like, that's like this show's production value is too bad for them not to continuously be at, like, the Daily Planet. Like, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, they straight up didn't have the budget to animate backgrounds in backgrounds that should have been animated. And they were just, like, hoping that, to God, that no one noticed. Like... And I'm like, oh, sorry, guys. Can totally see that. I get that it's an Adult Swim show, which is a bad thing. Like, when this show got announced, what, a year ago? And they're like, ooh, it's Adult Swim's, like, whatever, is doing Superman. I'm like, fucking... oh god, which background? Selkie, do you remember the scene in which Jimmy and Lois are looking for the boat from episode 1, and they go to the shoreline to look for, like, the marooned boat, and then they find it, and Jimmy points and goes, look, it's the boat, and you get an establishing shot of the shoreline, right? So that JPEG... Lois and Jimmy are no longer animated. There are just two JPEGs sitting in the background. They have audio of the water for the shoreline. Nothing in that shot is animated. So you just have this establishing shot that is on screen for too long. And it's just, oh god, the water's not animated. Nothing is did you think playing the water sound effect was gonna distract me enough? Like, that just pulled more attention to the fact nothing on the screen was moving. There's a lot of that where, like, clearly they just did not have the budget to move characters. So scenes or interactions that you would expect characters to emote or move, they're just stagnant. And I actually think the production makes the show harder to watch than how annoying I find the characters. Like, I probably could stomach this watching the show if it didn't look so bad. And I don't even think, like, the character designs are bad, they're just poorly used. Where did the budget go? There was no budget. Famously, Adult Swim shows have a much smaller budget than most other, like, television. And the reason for that is, like, the smaller audience, right? By being an Adult Swim show, you just have a smaller audience. So it's harder to justify a larger budget, especially for investors, right? That's also the reason why adult comedies are the way that they are. Is more for, like, budget reasons like that. It's just... You know, at the end of the day, more people are going to be watching, say, Adventure Time over whatever the latest adult comedy on Adult Swim is, right? Big Boomer Hator. Should I feel bad about how much I think Mr. Bronson is kind of hot? Probably. Let's see here. I guess I've also just seen the gimmick of, like, more of a comedic, like, rom-com version of, like, Superman and Lois's relationship done a lot better than this. So it just feels like there's just nothing here for me. Let's see here. And, like, I partially get it. I'm not the target demographic. Like, it's people who grew up in the Tumblr generation. That's the probably more of the target demographic. Yeah. I just think that with some tweaking, you could satisfy both audiences, right? You know, we had the 90s Superman the Animated Series, which satisfied, like, the cultural tastes of the youth of that era and older fans. You know, if that can do it, like, why not anything else? Yeah. Granted, that show was kind of perfect, so, you know, maybe that's a bad standard to expect from literally all other adaptations for for Superman. Nah, kind of don't like that. We'll just have the one, I guess. Yeah, no. No. Please work with me. There we go. It's like, please, clipping mask, please work the way I want you to. So what's your favorite Superman comic? Yeah, it was For the Man Who Has Everything. I really like the storyline for The Man Who Has Everything. I really like All-Star Superman. And I also really like Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader. Not Cape Crusader, sorry. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. That's what I mean. Though that's with a version of Superman that most people aren't familiar with. I guess so is For the Man Who Has Everything. That was those are pre-Crisis Superman, so not a Superman most people are familiar with anymore. So that personality can be a little jarring for people. I do think it's still, like, All-Star Superman is just like a very special comic. Like, you kind of just read that and it's like, if you read All-Star Superman and not get it, it's like, okay, so you just will never understand Superman media. Like, that's the benchmark. Like, Superman is just not a character for you if you don't, like, get All-Star. Which I know might sound like a little elitist, and like it kind of is. But it's like that comic is so entrenched in like what makes Superman important that it's yeah, if you don't like this, you don't like this character. I also really liked the storyline What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. That comic goes hard in a way that like I didn't expect it would. It's cool. It's biting. Like it's like it definitely is like a big critique of like modern, like how a modern generation could feel about Superman. That was the one that explains why Superman doesn't kill. It's more than that. It's more why like Superman just exists in the way that he does. It tackles like all of the it's a comic about like modern criticisms of Superman. And I say modern in quotes because this was like the 90s. Or was it the 80s? I think it was the 90s. Because that's like part of the issue with most adaptations of Superman is they try to address criticisms of Superman as if they're actual criticisms and not people who just don't get it, right? Like there's a reason why Superman is mostly unchanging and why that's important. And you get like firm answers for that in comics like All-Star and in What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And heck, you have Justice League Unlimited if you wanted like a an adaptation that does it well. Let's see here. Modern enough. Doesn't it just feel weird to be like, oh, it's modern enough. It's 30 years ago. Like I don't know. I miss when titles could be more than one word. Yeah, I feel like your title should be like in between a modern American film title and a Japanese light novel. Like you want to hit in between those, right? We've lost a certain sense of time. I mean, facts. I do think it's a little sad that in a modern lens, like the storyline, well, the Superman story, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow is just kind of not talked about anymore. Because I think that's it's weird. I wouldn't call that story timeless. It is very of its era, and not in a bad way. Like I know that might sound like in a bad way, but it's like if you're unfamiliar the environment that story was released in, this story might not make sense. Because that was the last Superman story. That was the idea about that comic. Because the year that comic released was the year that Crisis on Infinite Earths happened. So that meant that the old like the continuity that Superman had from the 1930s to the 80s was going to be wiped from history. So whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow was a story that was meant to be a conclusion to that version of Superman. And boy, is it a conclusion. That comic goes hard. That comic still, like, with thinking about some moments from it, I'm like, I can't believe they did that. Like, I realize the continuity was rebooting, like, the next month. So, like, in theory, no consequences, but it's also, like, these versions of these characters are gone. And I don't know. Watching Jimmy die in that comic feels bad. Like, watching all of, like, Superman's closest friends just one by one die during the climax of that story. It's like, oh, these are characters that have been around for 50 years and they're not coming back. Like, because the characters you get post-Crisis, like, those aren't the same characters. You know, it's a different continuity. It's a completely different thing. Because it's like when Lana dies and when Krypto dies. Those are moments that I'm never forgetting. Especially since we never really got that dynamic back with Lana. And that's a dynamic I actually really like in those older comics. Because it actually gives, like, a rival for Lois. Because you have both the childhood best friend character and the city go-getter girl both trying to go after Clark in some way, or Superman. Like, who's Lana? Oh. Lana was Clark's teenage girlfriend. She was actually, like, the girl next door, like, character. And she eventually, like, moves to Metropolis and is just Lois's rival, like, for Superman. And post-Crisis, that dynamic never really came back. Which, like, and I know some people, like, don't like the idea of, like, the love triangle kind of thing. I didn't think of it as, like, a love triangle. Like, it is. I think of it more as a love angle, if you will. Just because, like, Superman, like, will choose Lois in the end. Oh, yeah, Lana was doomed. Like... And they did confirm that in that storyline, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. There's a great scene in that comic that I've always loved, where because Brainiac, Lex Luthor, and a bunch of other villains are just going to kill Superman in the Fortress of Solitude, you have some of both Lana and Jimmy, because they're in the Fortress of Solitude as well, are like, oh, well, we want to... They forcefully volunteer, essentially, to be the first line of defense without Superman's permission. And they get back, like, their older superpowers, because it's partially like a fan service thing of, like, oh, you get to see Jimmy become Elastic Boy again, and Oh, you get, Lana gets her Kryptonian powers back, right? And, like, the first... When she takes the potion to get back her, like, Kryptonian powers, the first super ability she gets back is super hearing. And she hears, Superman in, like, the hallway down from her talking about how, oh, like, I wanted to propose to Lois, but I can't do that because of Lana. Like, I don't want to hurt her feelings. But if I did have to choose one or the other, like, it would be Lois. Like... So it's like, yeah, she knows. She knows that she's the girl next door who loses. Like... and, like, after hearing that, she, her and Jimmy go out into battle, saying, like, it has to be us that do that, like, that has to go out, because no one loves Superman like the both of us do, because we're Superman's best friends. Like, that's... that's, like, the last thing Lana says, before promptly getting murdered. Her and Jimmy do not last very long in battle in that. Like, there was definitely, like, a great sense of finality in that story, and that's definitely why I like it so much. Yeah, she calls herself, like, his best friend, and it's like, oh, that stings a little bit, but it's... I don't know. There's kind of a cool factor to that even, like, she's okay with that in some way. Let's see here. Acceptance, yeah, right? And that was also, like, the conclusion to Krypto for quite a number of years. Krypto dying against the battle at Kryptonite Man. Because that was apparently a mandate for post-Crisis, was that all Kryptonians and stuff from... things from Krypton would no longer be in continuity. Because they really wanted to, like, scale it back down to where Superman was the only Kryptonian post-Crisis, so characters like the rest of the Super Family were just gone. Characters like Krypto were now just gone. And they kind of still are. Like, Krypto is back in continuity, but you don't really see him around. You know, because they, for some reason, are like, no, that's too childish to include in stories. And I'm like, you cowards! And it's like, you have to keep Krypto. Like... I also want Streaky to come back. Like, come on. Bring back the Super Pets. Like... I love those guys. But for some reason, those characters are deemed, like, too childish. And I'm like, I don't get it. Is Bruce not simply allowed to have a dog anymore? Like, I don't get it. It's considered too weird for too childish for Superman to have, like, a dog that he hangs out with, but Diana is allowed to be best friends with a gorilla? I don't know. Like, I mean, I get it. DC gorilla privileges, it's a real thing. But also, come on. But then also they constantly are embarrassed about the gorilla privilege things. Like, some writers like to include the gorilla characters, and some writers are like, no, we can't bring back the gorillas. It's too embarrassing. Like, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know if the gorilla characters are that embarrassing in the long run. Also, they should totally use Boss Gorilla for the next Batman movie. I'm just saying. You definitely, like, audience could suspend their disbelief for that. I believe it. They would be okay with dark, gritty Boss Gorilla. Like, let's go. Then again, if we can't have, like, a good adaptation of Mala, like, maybe it is too much to ask for. I don't know if they ever included that in the Doom Patrol TV series. Or I guess that HBO Max show. Whatever. I heard that they made Larry gay. Which confuses me. And I was talking to the girl about that, like, at the card shop one day, because she was like, oh yeah, I learned about Doom Patrol from the TV show, so it was really weird going back to the comics and just Larry just is not gay. And I'm like, they made Larry gay? Like, but there was already a gay character in the Doom Patrol. Multiple, in fact. And she was like, yeah, I know that now. Unfortunate that, like, they actually lowered the number of gay characters for the TV series. Odd. Very odd, but okay. I almost would have thought they would have made Larry, like, if they wanted to be change some things for Larry with some precedence, would be like make Larry non-binary would have been the immediate decision I would make, given how some comic runs with Larry have been. But, you know, maybe that would be too much for audiences. I don't know. It's Doom Patrol. I feel like nothing is too out of the ordinary for people. Like, I remember the girl I was talking to about just having a chat about Doom Patrol with her girlfriend was like, oh, I started like the Young Animals run on Doom Patrol, and I remember my reaction was just like, was the Young Animals run the one where the main character fucked her cat? Like, and this girl's like eyes widen and just goes like, she fucks her cat? Like, and I'm like, oh, okay, hasn't gotten there. But yep, main character has a cat, so that's definitely the run I'm thinking of. Look, I think my favorite reaction is the other girl was like, it's Doom Patrol, I'm not even surprised. Like... Like, the Doom Patrol's gimmick in comics is that they are the world's strangest superhero team. And boy, do they commit to that bit. Which is also the reason why I just, in my mind, I just go, you can't adapt this comic. Like, you cannot adapt the Doom Patrol and make it for mainstream audiences. Like, the whole point of this team is that it's weird as fuck. Like, I mean, when one of the main like when one of your main villains is a gay brain in a jar in an active romantic relationship with a gorilla, like, we're you know, you set a precedence real fast. Those bitches gay, good for them. Yeah, I heard that was either heavily downplayed or removed in the TV show. And I'm like, you absolute cowards. Or at least at the time. There have been more seasons of the Doom Patrol since Conversation, so I don't know. I guess they could have like put that into the show. But like, you should have said it. Like, you just... No, they should be in a very forward, like, romantic relationship. This is the Doom Patrol. You should be trying to both weird the audience every scene and be telling a fun story. And if you aren't doing that, bitch, this ain't the Doom Patrol. Or at least post-80s Doom Patrol, right? Like, if you want to have a more laid-back adaptation of the Doom Patrol, you got to take it back to the 60s. Like, which definitely is more my preference for the Doom Patrol, because that's the comics that I read more of, you know? Like, because I like the 60s era of the Doom Patrol. It's still weird. It's still very weird. But it's less weird by today's standards. It's one of those things where that run of the comics is, like, really weird for the 60s. And then you have the really weird ending in which they just kill off the entire cast. Because DC thought they wouldn't use those characters again. So they just kill the entire cast. And it's like, bruh. Is this what we're doing? And I can't believe they included that in the adaptation for Batman Brave and the Bold, like the comedy kids show. Like, when they had their Doom Patrol episode, bitch, they just all die as a reference to the ending in the comic. Like, that's the best adaptation of the Doom Patrol. Just that singular episode of Batman Brave and the Bold. Like, that episode got the Doom Patrol in a way that I don't see, like, other adaptations. Granted, it's far more esoteric, and that, like, that episode is more about, like, the cultural impact of the Doom Patrol and why, like, the Doom Patrol fans like that comic so much. It's really meta, which also very Doom Patrol. Because you have, like, they included Flex Mentallo in the TV series, right? I assume so. I think I remember hearing that. Like the guy who has the power to like flex and alter reality when like Beach King or Beach Hunk appears above him. I assume they would include that power, but maybe that's a little too weird. I don't know. Cause you go back to like his miniseries and you're like, what is happening? Grant. Because of course it's Grant Morrison, right? Always is. Always is. It's like that comic book, incredible. At the same time, I don't know what was happening. I feel like that's a comic in which, like, there probably should be 4-hour-long video essays about, but what does it mean? But because it's a comic book, we don't have that. And bitch, I ain't doing that. It's a Grant Morrison book. I don't know what it was fucking talking about. I mean, I kind of get it. It's also been a decade since I've read that book. So, you know, there's that as well. It's like, oh, I kind of get what this is going for. I don't... But it's a guess. You know, it's... He wasn't as straightforward about his theming in that book that he was with, like, Animal Man. And how Animal Man was very much like, ooh, let me, in a meta context, talk about storytelling via superheroes. Like, really comment on that idea of like superhero comic books in a really meta way, and that's what makes like that Animal Man series like important to like history, because it was like one of the first books to do it in a very Grant Morrison way. I don't know if people still like that book. I've heard like some modern fans go like, what the fuck is this? To it, but like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how people would react today to like the author showing up within the book itself and going like, hi, Animal Man, I'm your writer. It's a little crazy by... It's a little maybe more passe by today's standards. I don't know. It's a little odd. It's always hard for me to kind of imagine, like... don't think that would be a big deal today. Yeah, it wouldn't. But I also think, like, what Grant did with it was a little more different than you would expect even today. There was something kind of raw about like Animal Man breaking down and going like, if this is all fictional, then why did you make me live a life of tragedy? And Grant just going like, because it sells. Like, man was... Because it was the edgy 90s, right? So, like... And it was just, like, Grant, like, doesn't say it in, like, a very cynical way. He says it in, like, this is just how this is. You get that moment where Animal Man, like, asks, like, for his family back who has died in the comic, and Grant is like, yes, I can bring them back. This is a comic book. and just simply draws them back in. Like... So I think, like, I've heard some modern criticisms of, like, it's too meta. But it's also, like, I don't know, it's such a statement on, like, what you can do in a superhero comic versus, like, any other medium. Right? Like, in the wild world of, like, a superhero comic, you can do stuff like that and not even bat an eye. Right? And that was kind of like the point of that series. Or at least by the end of it, right? Like, it started out as a normal superhero comic until Grant was like, I'm bored. I'm gonna Grant Morrison this piece of shit. As he does, you know? Yeah, if they will do it. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's definitely something that, like, I love about, like, those comics, and that you just can't do outside of comic books. Like, not in the same way. Like, it just reads different. Also, you have the audience expectation, right? Like, there are things you can casually do in comics that you just cannot as casually do outside of it, you know? Like, how much you have to bend over backwards to make, say, like, even Deadpool work outside of comics, like, because you have to change up his shtick quite a bit, like, to make that a little more palatable. But in, like, you know, in comic book land, you have characters like Ambush Bug running around. This is just normal. It's probably the reason why, like, Gwenpool didn't get chosen to appear outside of comics in a more heavier way than, like, Spider-Gwen or Kamala did. It's just like, no, Gwenpool's comic is a little too... It's a little too comic book to be adapted. And I'm like, what? But, like, sure, you can't one-for-one figure out a way to adapt that famous panel where, like, you have Gwenpool holding a pencil and poking it below the frame of the panel. And then in the next panel, you have Gwenpool looking up at the pen, now dipping down into the next panel. Like, you probably can't get away with storytelling like that outside of a comic book. Because it would probably it doesn't read as well, right? Like, it would almost come off as too quirky if you were to animate that. While, like, in a comic book, you're like, oh, this is her experimenting with breaking reality. Like, and you're kind of on the up and up with it. Like, as soon as she starts doing it, like, it's like, yes, this is normal. This can happen. Like, which is probably why you don't see, like, a lot of books even get, like, considered for like, adaptation, you know, going back to, like, Flex Mantallo, like, I was 18 minutes in the past. Ah, well, good to catch up, Messer. Like, having, like, Flex Mantallo in his own miniseries be a fictional character might be a little too much for people, right? Like, 'cause that's a revelation in that comic, but not to Flex Mentallo. There's never a moment where he's like, ah, yes, I am a fictional character in this universe. That never really happens. It's a revelation for the audience. Like, because that book was definitely about, like, how ideas have power. And that, like, we should be putting our, like, ideas into more positive or more forward-thinking, like, ideas, rather than the example that the book uses as a metaphor being a bomb. Because that book posits, like, you know, the bomb was an idea before it became reality, so why not just have ideas that benefit the world rather than detract from it? Like, and it does that in a very meta way that I don't think you can really do. Grant was very much taking advantage of the fact that this was a comic book. That comic is also very adult, and also a very Grant Morrison way, where it's just like, I just read a panel of a teenager masturbating to his own comics. Okay. It's the same as the old one, just less blunt. It is and it isn't, right? Like, it is going for something different. Like, his run on Animal Man was more like the power of superhero comics, while, like, Flex Mentallo was more about how we should be, like, putting better ideas into the world. Man, imagine if they tried to, like, put that into a movie. Like, oof. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think I don't think a normal audience member that goes and watch, like, a comic book movie, like, adaptation is going to, like, jive with that style of storytelling or those type of, like, themes. That's true as well. Very sad. Very sad. Because I would like for them to one day, like... I mean, I know that these comics are, like, critically acclaimed, and, like, people like them, and they're like, always talked about in comic book spaces. I don't know. I think it would be neat if they were actually recognized. You know what I mean? You know, I'll talk to a lot of people and, like, oh, you should read, like, this comic book. It's really, like, influential. It comments on, like, history and blah, 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 blah. And the person will most likely be like, but, like, will it become a movie? So I don't have to actually, like, read the comic? And I have to tell them, like, no. Like, like, that's not happening. Like, that's... Like, you have the comic Miracle Man, which I haven't finished reading, right? like Tom King's Miracle Man, which came out a few years ago, or maybe it's older than that. And I remember reading like part of it, and just like I was in a very specific headspace where I was like, I probably should not be reading this. Not right now, later. Because that book comments on mental health in a way that's like very raw. And you just don't see that in adaptation. Because that book was also like really using the fact that it was like a superhero comic to tell this, right? Because definitely just like reading the couple issues I did and seeing just the degradation of Miracle Man's like perception of the world, I'm like, yeah, well, another day. But also at the same time, it's like, damn, I really wish like that could be appreciated outside of like just the comic book community. Because that's I've always liked the Tom King's books because of that. Because he always like, he kind of like takes this idea and always just runs with it in his books, for better or worse. Very much for better or worse. Because I know that a lot of people don't like his Adam Strange book because of that. And it's like, I get it, you know, not the best character to be using for that story that he tried to do there. But I do like how viscerally emotional and raw, like, his books typically are. Like, I remember the first book I read from Tom King was, like, the 2015 Omega Men series. And I did not know what I was getting into. That was a book that I just saw the cover on, like I saw the cover on the shelf and just went. I just picked it up because I'm like, ooh, that cover looks really cool. I had no idea who the Omega Men were, did not know about Tom King, and just read that book and absolutely loved it. And that book is like, has a lot to say about social injustice and terrorism. And that book is from the terrorists' perspective. It's something. I don't know how well that book will go over with like non-comic book readers, but because it's like, oh, you kind of get why like these characters are doing everything that they're doing, and you kind of get why the society of like the planet that the book takes place in, like why that society is the way that it is. It's neat. I do not expect that to ever be used outside of the comic book space, you know. Then again, like I don't think Tom King's writing in general will ever be like really used outside of that. Like he's a prolific writer at this point. He's known, maybe not beloved, but he is known. People have lots of criticisms for that man's writing. Not unfounded, but you know. I like the majority of his work. Even when I don't like his creative decisions, I will usually still like the book, you know? Though I did not read his Batman book. Did not do that. Maybe one day I'll go back and read his run on Batman, because it's like, oh wow, he wrote like a AAA book? Weird. Usually he's on books for characters that like no one fucking cares about. You know, like the Omega Men or Miracle Man. Feels bad for Miracle Man. You think that character would be more relevant? He's very important to the lore. But, you know. Is it because he's a Jack Kirby character? Is that it? Is that why there's an awful bias towards not using him at DC? Unfortunate. Okay. Because I kind of get that you could probably criticize Miracle Man and go like, isn't he just Batman but in space and not brooding? Because his whole gimmick is that he can escape from any trap. That's it. That's his gimmick. There's no trap he cannot escape from. And that probably is not a very, like, exciting... I mean, that was exciting back in the day, right? Like, if you're... when you're 10 years old reading comics in the 70s, that's probably enticing. That's probably cool. Maybe not by today's standards. But, you know, you can spice him up, you know? He is like the he was raised as Darkseid's son. So like lore-wise, you got a lot to play with Miracle Man. Like, cuz that was how he got his escape artist like skills, is he would constantly have to escape like being tortured. Right? Like, he had to deal with, like, Granny Goodness all the time, right? Man, they should have had Granny Goodness be the villain in the live-action Justice League movie. I'm just saying. If they were gonna use, like, a general from Apocalypse, fuck, it should have been Granny Goodness. Rather than Steppenwolf. I probably would have watched that movie if they used Granny Goodness. Like, come on. Come on. That character is lit. Maybe too much for people. I don't know. Is what it is, though. I guess maybe I was never watching that movie anyway. Granny Goodness? Yeah, Granny Goodness. She was one of the... She's one of, like, the main villains on Apocalypse. Like... She's one of, like, the main generals. She's in charge of, like, torture on Apocalypse. Real cool. Real cutthroat. Leaves an impression. That's one of those characters that you just, like... You read anything with Granny, and you're like, oh, okay. And they managed to make her work in, like, a kid's show setting. Back in, like, in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, they had Granny show up. And they actually managed to make her, like, work. Well, she's, like, actually unsettling. There's... Like, that character is, yeah. Definitely something. Like, looking back, I'm actually surprised they, like, managed to put her into Justice League Unlimited. But hey, in that same episode, we did get, you know, Miracle Man was the point of view character. His wife, Barda, was there. Like, 10 out of 10. That's one of those, like, strong comic book women that you just don't see in adaptation too much. Which is like a bit of a shame, because like it is a very different dynamic than you normally would see, because it's a Miracle Man is like the acrobat, and his wife Barda is the muscle of the two. Because she was a reformed Fury, like from Apocalypse, if I remember right. So it's a much different, like, duo relationship. At least for, like, a male-female duo in comics. What? Let me see here. Let's see here. But you see them every once in a while. Though I always get the feeling that you don't see Barda in adaptation too much because of her design. Because boy, she do have a very comic book design. I look at that helmet and I go, ah, what a Jack Kirby character. This is never getting adapted. I don't think an actress would ever want to be, like, wearing that, so... In which case, cowards? Like, come on. Put on the helmet. But I guess that's the current issue with, like, comic book characters known for wearing a helmet. They can't really do too much in films, you know, you want to see an actor's face. Little unfortunate. But, you know, different medium, different expectations. Okay. Y esto. I should probably go back and, like, actually finish reading Fourth World. Because I always hear that those books are just, like, masterpieces that we just... that fiction has, like, stolen from for so many years. Because, you know, it's Kirby's not going to be allowed to sue anyone. He doesn't have the money to do that. So I think it'd be neat to, like, go back and see how all of those ideas started. Because he's credited for, like, creating the space opera genre. And just most sci-fi stuff from the like late 70s and the 80s just apparently just hard stole from Fourth World. So it'd be neat to go back to that. I remember trying to read some of it back in the day, like more of like the New Genesis stuff. Which are comics that DC themselves apparently don't like to refer back to that much. Or at least, like, executive-wise. It's kind of weird reading that, like, apparently DC hated Jack Kirby when Kirby was working at DC. So those comics kind of got buried. Oh, yeah. Because Kirby was more known for being a Marvel producer, when he joined the DC label after his falling out with Stan, apparently the executives were really hoping that Kirby's comics wouldn't sell, to, like, push the narrative that, like, DC is better than Marvel, and would, like, purposefully put Kirby on worse performing books, or books that, like, were not really suited for his style of storytelling, to try to make those books not sell well with his name on it. It was very weird. And so when he got to make his own original comic at DC, which was Fourth World, like, that just kind of got buried. At least historically, that's what the story is. I get it, but that's stupid. It is, yeah. Well, you know, not corporations, you know, how executives trying to actually compete with one another, and how, like, people can sometimes get in the crossfire, you know. You have Stan Lee, right? Who was, like, kind of a monster in some regards. It is very weird how the difference between how they talk about Stan in interviews, like, at Marvel and DC, very, very different from what, like, Time remembers him as. Because reading statements like, ex-creator died penniless because of because of Stan is like, or reading, like, reading stuff from artists at Marvel from back in the day saying that Stan is killing creativity. Or actively limiting the potential of storytelling in comics. Because I remember reading one of the artists that pioneered the comic book technique of kind of paneling out a page more like a storyboard, So instead of just having stagnant panels of like characters pointing at each other, you know, he was pioneering like creating smaller panels showing more intricate movements, or spending like half a page with several panels detailing one action, like almost like animation if it was like kind of like storyboarding for animation, as it were. And but he wanted to like make those pages with no narration boxes. You know, it's that the artwork is the thing that's like showing you exactly what's happening. And apparently Stan would constantly try to get him to put in narration boxes in those pages. Because he's like, no, like the audiences won't get it. Like if there's no narration boxes, people won't know what's happening. Like, and that was part of the reason why that artist like quit Marvel. It's like, unfortunate. There we go. Yeah. Didn't know when to die. Well, see, that's the weird part, is Stan wasn't old in that era. That was him at his prime. That's just how Stan was. He was far more into like trying to make books more like marketable than like trying to like push the medium forward. Which, you know, I get it. But you know, you have multiple titles. You can you can break this up a little bit. It's definitely one of those things where like reading how stingy he could be with that sort of stuff kind of makes me go, I wonder how much of like books like Fantastic Four and Spider-Man kind of makes me wonder like how much of those was him, and how much of like for like Spider-Man, like how much of that what made that book so good early on was that more Steve Ditko, like the co-writer of the book as he's credited. Historically, we kind of assume that because people like refer to that run as the Ditko run. We don't like, people don't really say that that's the Stan Lee run. They go, oh, the Steven Ditko run. Like, because I think we've kind of realized who was doing more on that book. And I think it was also whoever the Doctor Strange writer was at the time. I think he also like was one of the people like really complaining about how, I think his argument, if I remember, if this is the correct guy, I could be wrong. Like his argument against Stan was like how much credit Stan was actually taking compared to how much work he was actually like doing on books. Now that's not to say that like Stan doesn't like deserve the credit, right? Like he does, but it's that he was like to propel his own career forward, he was doing very shading things, specifically with how books were being credited. Which he has he has apologized for. Like later in his career, he was like, yeah, I fucked up. And most people kind of attribute those statements to like, oh, is he talking about Kirby? Like, yeah, that's true, Michael. It is what it is with that. Kind of a shame that like Kirby's name isn't like going to be remembered in the annals of history because of that. Because that man did so much work to like put that medium on the map, to be pioneering different release formats and styles of illustration to really make that medium what it is, and he just gets like no credit. Like legacy wise, he gets more credit now, but that's still not like the most widespread information. It's more like in comic book communities, it's like, oh yeah, there's a reason why Stan Lee's nickname was Stan the Man, and why Jack Kirby's nickname was King Kirby. Like, that man earns that title. Like I remember hearing what was it? Kirby's book The Demon is usually criticized as being one of Kirby's worst comic books he's ever made. And yes, by Kirby standards, that comic not very good. The problem is, by comic book standards, that book is still just good. Which is like insane to like read. Like I remember when the first time I read The Demon, I'm like this is mediocre to bad for Kirby, but it's still a good comic book. What the fuck? What is this black magic? It's like, did he sell somebody's soul to like be as skilled as he is? Because like when you're used to reading like Kirby's comics, you can definitely tell that The Demon was phoned in. And yet even that, I mean, that book was sold very well. Maybe not like critically acclaimed, but is very fondly remembered, and is still used for adaptation to this day. If you are unaware, The Demon is Etrigan's comic book. Because even Etrigan was a Jack Kirby creation. I did not know that for the longest time. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, what can't this man do? It failed at failing. It actually did. Because Kirby... He was told the comic was just going to be a one-shot because he hated it. He was mandated by DC to write a horror comic. And he was like, I don't want to do a horror comic. Especially a fantasy horror comic, which was also part of the mandate. And yeah, like the one-shot did so well that it got upgraded to being an ongoing. And yeah, you can, it was so phoned in, like, for Jack Kirby standards. And yet, even then, like, he created some of the most, like, memorable, like, fantasy and magic-themed characters in DC in that book. I'm like, how does this man do this? Because that's the book that introduced Clarion the Witch Boy. And, like, Morgan Le Fay into, like, the DC canon. And those characters just didn't change. Like, we are still using the Jack Kirby interpretation of Clarion as, like, one of the main sources of how Clarion should act as a character. Like, absolutely insane. That man's... That's one of those people that, like, you hear about how great they are, and you're like, I mean, like, I'm sure his work is good, but I'm sure his work isn't, like, that good. And then you read it, and you're like, fuck. This is the greatest visionary in art of our, like, of the past century, and we literally just let him slip away from the universe. Shit was so tragic. Because now it's like his work is remembered more than him, which, like, that's just art in America. Because America weirdly puts more emphasis on the IP itself versus the people that made it. And I've always thought that was weird, right? Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. I think that's really weird. Not how you're supposed to go facts. Like, maybe I'm just used to how, like, Japanese media is, like, advertised and portrayed, where they really put, like, the creators front and center. And here, like, in America, that's just not as much of a thing. There we go. There we go. Mr. Bronson. The Good Whittle Otter. I probably spelled this name wrong, but that's okay. But all right, guys. I think that'll be it for the Dwowins, right? It's fine. I've been drawn for like 3.5 hours. It's fine. So I hope you've been able to enjoy this, had a good time, and I'll see you guys around.